and welcome to yet another edition of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoesReborn.com, with me as your host, Chris Avengers Disassemble McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me today to talk about the news that Robert Schwentke is set to return as director and the remaining production crew has been assembled for the upcoming G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie is Justin Snake Eyes Assem Bell. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this news burst.
You're pretty clever sometimes, you know that?
Sometimes? I mean, come on. It looks like it's full steam ahead for the Snake Eyes movie now, as we have heard that Robert Schwentke will return in time to direct for early October and that the production crew have been assembled. Two assistant directors will be joining Schwentke, John R. Saunders, who worked on the John Wick trilogy, and Dan Mansfield, who worked on Deadpool, Rise of the Planet of the Apes and 2010's A-Team. As well as all the other crew members that we have been reporting on for the last few months, Snake Eyes has had a list of new additions, including location managers Anne Gooby, Paul Giordano, Sean Finnan and Larissa Craig, as well as Maya Rickle as production assistant. Eric Howsam, who worked on the previous Joe movies, also joins the team as a producer. It has been said that Paramount will inject $20 million into the Canadian economy with this film, which excludes the salaries of non-Canadian crew members and the movie cast. This news just solidifies the fact that the movie is going ahead, and now we await the actual cast. We already know Henry Golding is in talks, but the sooner we get official word on his status and the rest of the cast, the better. Justin, firstly, are you surprised that Schwentke is going to be back in time?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think we both were kind of on the fence with not just whether he'd be back in time or whether they'd actually wait around for him. Things did get delayed a little bit, so I won't say I'm surprised he made it back in time, but I'll say I'm surprised that he is going to be ultimately the director of the film.
I mean, would you prefer somebody else, or are you quite happy now that at least we've got someone to steer the ship?
You know, I'd be concerned if they did end up replacing him, that it would set the film back even further. Yeah. So as it stands, I think he will do as good a job as any. I mean, it's pretty clear for the G.I. Joe franchise, they're not going to get a huge blockbuster director. So, you know, it's no offense to Mr. Schwentke, but, you know, it's a guy that's got some directing experience that will be behind the camera, and I guess that's really all we can ask for. I mean, we have a director and have a film going forward. I guess that's better than the alternative.
Sure. I mean, are you convinced this particular crew can give us a decent film?
Sure. I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, they seem to have a decent pedigree. Honestly, you know, I can't sit here and promise to tell you exactly how much influence assistant directors and production assistants and whatever have on films, but there does seem to be a pretty healthy resume with all of the folks involved here. I mean, anybody who's worked on the John Wick trilogy is going to be a kind of a welcome addition to an action movie cast. So I'm all for that. But realistically, you know, I couldn't tell you what each of these individuals are actually going to be doing on the film and whether their presence will make an impact on the overall end product. But they've obviously got resumes and have some history. So, you know, as long as they've got some experience, why not?
I must admit, I was really surprised when Robert Schwentke first kind of took the role and it was kind of like, you know, he's going to be the director and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. But then when we reported on the fact that he was like shifting off and he was going to do his own little kind of like pet project that had been greenlit, I was kind of thinking, oh man, that shows a real lack of commitment to kind of do this particular film.
Yeah.
And I was a little concerned, but I thought, you know, like Paramount, they'll probably just go, right, we'll get the next guy involved. That never seemed to happen. So they obviously wanted Schwentke. They obviously wanted him from the start, and that was someone they weren't willing to change in this particular kind of setup. So there's something that they're seeing in him. Now, I don't know whether that's just because he's a little bit, I don't know, he's not, like you say, he's not as big a name as, you know, you not that you might expect, that, but if you wanted a big blockbuster film, you know, you'd kind of want to go for someone a bit more, I don't know, bigger in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, I'm not sure if it's like if it's a cost thing or if it's the case of them actually seeing something in Robert Schwentke and thinking, well, this could be the guy to give us something that we actually need here.
I think it's a combination. You know, I mean, I think they're obviously not going to invest millions of dollars on a really big name director. So, I mean, that's part of it. On the same side of things, every director's got to start somewhere, and I'm sure they saw something. I don't think they would I don't know how much a movie director makes per film, but I don't think they would throw a bunch of money at somebody they legitimately don't think could do the job.
Yeah.
You look at, any decent action movies going back however long, everybody started somewhere. I mean, nobody... I would argue people probably still don't know who Chad Stahelski is or David Leitch, even though they were both credited as directors for John Wick and, obviously made a name for themselves as action film directors based on that franchise.
Yeah.
Justin Lin or whatever. I think Fast and the Furious was kind of where he cut his teeth, if I remember correctly. But there are obviously some really well-known action film directors now that weren't well-known before they got their first role. So, he's got a couple films under his belt. He directed Red and I think there's
all of the Divergence and all that kind of stuff as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
whatever that's worth.
It's funny that, well, actually, do you think he'd be better off doing from Divergent and all those other films? Ever Vigilant would probably fit him better, wouldn't it?
I mean, I saw I think the first one or two of the Divergent movies. I think I don't remember when or why or how and. From a directing perspective, they weren't terrible. They're a typical second-tier Hunger Game type of films, young adult sort of that type of thing. But as far as the actual directing goes, it was fine. So I don't hold that against him.
Totally, and you shouldn't be holding anything against him. So no word yet on other cast members. We've heard that Henry Golding is in talks to. Well, we're assuming based on all of the articles that seem to say he's going to be Snake Eyes. But
right.
Again, we did mention that it could be that he's just in for a lead role talk. And in talks, for a lead role. It doesn't necessarily mean Snake Eyes, but everyone has jumped on it being Snake Eyes. So, I don't know. We don't really know what to expect because we haven't had official word yet. And obviously, I don't think any official word would be made until someone actually is given that position. Obviously, they're not going to be saying, we're talking to Henry Golding. They wouldn't do that. So until he puts pen to paper for whatever role he's in for, we won't know. But are you expecting some casting news soon? Because, I mean, stuff is coming thick and fast now. And if they're filming in October, we've only got like a month or so to go, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's going to start coming, I think, any time now. Henry Golding's probably the tip of the iceberg, and as soon as that sort of starts unfolding, I think the rest of the dominoes will start falling. And I think part of the reason why we may not have heard of, casting news yet is probably because they aren't such big stars, and so they aren't such household names, and unlike, Dwayne Johnson and some of those people, we're not going to hear about them too far ahead of time. So
never heard of him. Although I did watch Skyscraper today, just for shizzles and giggles, and it's a classic Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie. Like
he is like the same character in every single film, whether it's
weird.
The Tooth Fairy or whether it's Roadblock or whether it's whatever. And
I think he's such a nice dude, and I just find him seriously compelling in everything he does, but every movie he's in is kind of garbage. It's really weird. I don't understand how someone can be so beyond every film they're in. I don't understand it.
He makes a ton of money. He's far and away kind of the focus of every single film, and I would agree with you 100%. Every film that he's in is mediocre at best, yet somehow you're right. He manages. He is far more successful than any of the individual films he's ever been in. It's really bizarre.
And it's just basically...
They make a bunch of money, and I guess that's the important thing.
Yeah,
but
bums on seats, as they say. In any case, Justin, thanks for jumping on and chatting through that little bit of news. A little bit of news is quite an important bit of news because it means that basically this movie is going forward, and I imagine this is going to be cranked up to 1,000 over the next month. We're going to be doing this every single day. Maybe 3 times a day we'll be talking about this crap. We're going to have to change the format.
It's going to be crazy.
And also a shout out to Udana Wyjesaraya, aka at Silver Optimus on Twitter, for giving us the heads up again. Thanks for the intel, buddy. We really appreciate it. Keep tagging us in those posts because it means I have less to do in terms of searching this stuff out. And Justin, thanks for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
That's it for this instalment of the Full Force News Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Justin Assem Bell. See you next time. And as always, Full Force Assemble. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.